Good afternoon, good evening, good night. My name is Nathaniel Watkins, and this is Impact 2020. For those of you who have been here before, you know how this goes. For those who are new, this is our conversation where we talk about social injustice, where we talk about things that are going on in the community. What we're doing differently, though, is this time we're going to talk a little bit, not political, but we're going to get into voting. Since this is election time, this is the time of the year where we go and we cast our votes. We're going to start in on that topic. With us, we have some great guests today. We have Tiara and we have Dana. I'm going to bring them in now. How are y'all doing?
Good. Hey.
Great, great. Let's hop right into it. So we have a big election coming up, as y'all know. One of the things that we've consistently talked about is getting out to vote, voter turnout. What we have found is that a lot of young people just don't vote, especially when we're talking about young Black people, males and females that don't vote. There's been a number of people talked about this is their first time vote. For example, Shaquille O'Neal, 40-plus-year-old, I think he's might be 50, basketball player, respected by a lot. This is going to be the first time he's ever voted. Kevin Hart recently came out and said he didn't vote until he was in his mid-30s. Matter of fact, it was the first election was Barack Obama. And you had a lot of other people, famous people, coming out and saying they haven't voted before. It is an epidemic in the Black community. Why do you think that young people especially don't vote? Tiara, let's start with you.
I think that young people just don't have the information needed to understand voting. It doesn't take, I think, we know that we have the right, we have the privilege to go out there and vote, but do we understand what voting is? Do we understand politics? Do we give our young Black individuals, students, children, young age adults, the opportunity to really understand what casting a vote means, what your vote means, and what it means to vote down to the lowest part of the political party. And so I think that us getting out there at the age that we are and people older than us really putting it out there in the atmosphere that we need to go out there and vote, it would actually spark an interest in our younger crowd. I know my kids are interested and they're like, oh, this and oh, that, So getting them out there to spark an interest, I think will get them out there to actually vote.
Okay. Dana, I'm gonna ask you the same question. What do you think? Why do you think people don't vote, and what are some of the things that we can do in order to get a little higher level of voter participation?
I think a lot of it is complacency and ignorance, and just the fact that young people especially, don't see the direct correlation between their vote and their voice and what is happening in their environment around them. They don't see how voting for the president is going to impact my little neighborhood, which, I mean, it does. But I think we also need to focus on more local elections where they could see a direct impact. And I think also education level plays a lot in that. If in the school system, or wherever you're being educated, if there were more of a focus on why your vote matters, how the electoral college works, how long people serve terms. And I also feel like if young voters knew what the demographics of those people who are casting their vote look like, they would fight more for their right to vote.
Good point. I'm gonna bring in a male perspective. Steve, how are we doing today?
Good evening.
So we're sitting here. We're talking about voting. I'm gonna put out a concept to you. Since you're the guy here, I'm gonna have you respond to it. So one of the things I would say is that Black men don't vote. Black women do a lot better job of voting. And so to us, Black women will have to save us again. Black women have the burden or the responsibility, unfortunately, to make sure that, we vote. If Black women, especially young Black women, decided that I'm not messing with a young Black man who doesn't vote, is that going to change the ball game? Is that going to get young Black men to vote? What's going to get us to vote?
It could definitely persuade men to vote more. Black women are strong-willed and strong-minded, and there's a lot of situations that the Black man would be struggling if it wasn't for the Black woman. Growing up, my mother and father would literally take me to vote with them, and I would just stand beside them and vote. And there was a situation when I became 18, I was really getting fussed at by my mother to make sure I would get on the bus when I was in Charlotte at Johnson C. Smith, get on the bus and go vote. And my father wasn't as aggressive like my mother was, but he would say, you need to make sure you vote, and it was over with. But my mom every day in my ear telling me I need to vote. So, with women, they're just strong. Black women are strong, and there's a lot of situations where when a Black woman takes something away from the Black man, they figure out how to get back good with that woman, and the persuasion occurs. And I love that about the Black woman. And I really believe that more Black men would vote if that was a situation.
Good. So that's a good point. So, what do we think is the church's role? I know, and Steve, I know you know as well, since we grew up together, that when we were young, the polling place was actually in our church.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dana, what do you think? What's the role of the church in getting people to vote? Is that something that we should be focused on? Is that something that we should do?
Absolutely. I definitely think the church has a pretty integral role in supporting the community in voting. I think church polling places are excellent starting points. But also I think congregational leaders, deacons, deaconesses, pastors, what have you, should be supporting and encouraging their congregation to make their voice heard. Christ is not only in the church, he is not only in your house, but he can also be in government. There's a role in every aspect of your life. And I think that should transfer also over to how you're voting and if you're voting.
That's a great point. So, Tiara, you had something to say, Steve?
No, I was just agreeing.
Oh, okay. So, Tiara, if we, here's what's a little bit weird. So we have an election coming up, and we're encouraging people to vote, and we may have the churches encouraging people to vote, but there are groups who are trying to stop us from voting. Whether you want to say it's one political party, whether you want to say it's just individual people, there's going to be voter intimidation coming up to the polls, people with guns and whatnot trying to stop us from voting. At this point, what do you say to somebody who just says, "I'm scared to vote"? Like it's too confusing. I just don't want to do it. How do you? What's our response?
I come across a lot of people who, say stuff like that. That is like, what's the point of voting? I don't care about voting and things like that. But like I said earlier, when you get into voting, the idea comes and you want to learn more. You want to learn more. So voting, just having that idea and the responsibility to vote and to vote for your community and to vote for your children and to vote for your future, just that idea should spark your interest to learn more about politics. And it's not just always about voting for the president. It's not just about voting for the president. So when you learn those things and you really just get out there and try to vote. Those people that don't want to vote, I always say, don't stop there. If you don't have a voice, you have nothing to say later. So at least try to gather enough information so that you can have a voice, or you can have an idea of which way you want to go and which way you want to vote. And if you don't want to vote, have a reason for not voting. Don't just go out there and say, "I'm not voting," and you're just as ignorant to whatever situation is going on in your community. Have a reason to say that I'm not voting and this is what I'm going to do for my community. but do not go out there and not do anything for your community and don't vote. So I need for everybody to understand that voting is a privilege. It is your responsibility. It is your duty. You need to vote. And by voting, you figure out more information and learn more about your community and your local politicians.
Okay.
So.
All right, so we're going to turn. And the turn is going to be towards a comment that was made from a famous person. It was a rapper, 50 Cent. He said that he doesn't care if Trump doesn't like black people, vote for Trump. And there was a lot of people who came against him and, said some negative things towards him for that. But that was his sentiment, that it was about the taxes that were going on that were going to be raised under Biden's plan. And so he was like, I don't care if he doesn't like black people, vote for him. So one of the concepts that's been going on is this concept of, when we're talking about black males, is that they don't want to break down the system. They just want to be at the top of the system. For example, they don't care if the people who are at the top, if it's a rich white man who is homophobic, racist, sexist, bigoted, all of those things. They don't care to take that and take him down or remove him from power. They just want to be right beside him. That's one of the concepts that is talking about black males. And when you look at a comment that 50 Cent made, well, I don't care, if your assumption is that Trump doesn't like black people, then you're going to vote for him just because you want to be wealthy and up there with him. That concept is something that's been embedded around, that black men, that there's a group of black men who really don't care about taking down the system, really don't care about structural change, social injustice. They just want to be the oppressor. Steve, give me some thoughts on that.
Well, 50 Cent's rich. He's rich. And he doesn't want his money to dwindle down because of taxes. It's not about what Trump says or does. He wants his money. And a lot of celebrities are like that, regardless of the color or the sex. They don't want their money to dwindle. Charles Barkley said this when Trump got elected on Inside the NBA. He said, "Sorry, poor people, I'm going to be fine." But he wasn't being like, he was serious. Like, he was apologizing because he knew Trump was bad, but he knows he's rich. So his taxes are going to go down, where the regular guys, like, myself, teachers, and everybody else, our taxes shoot up. So the rich man, regardless of color or the rich person, they want money, and that's what they care about. Trump doesn't care about color. He does, but he cares more about 50 Cent than a poor white man, because that's what he knows. Mm-hmm. So he knows money. So he doesn't care about the poor people. He cares about himself and his riches and his family having abundancy. So, the black men, that the celebrities that say that, they know the game, and they know, they know how much money they're making, and they know how much money they want to continue to make. So when 50 Cent said that, he's just rich, and he wants to remain rich, and he doesn't care about anybody else being poor or rich. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Good point. So looking at that concept where, we have black men who don't really care about the social injustice. They don't really care about, treating women poorly, or the system that is the glass ceiling, as long as they can get to where they want to be. How is that? Have you seen that to be true, or is that problematic, that we have black men that, they don't really care about marching as long as they can get theirs?
Yeah, I think that's definitely could be a problem within the community. I thankfully have not witnessed myself, but that also speaks to the quality of men that I have within my life. I think for a lot of people who do think that way, money equates power. And so in their mind, why would I give away any of my power? Even if it is for the good of my brother, even if it is for the good of my fellow man, why would I risk that? When I have this money, I have power, and therefore my race is, not quite as major of a factor as it would be if I did not have the money.
Yeah.
So it trumps all else.
Mm-hmm. And so Tiara, let me ask you. So we talked about voting. Is it okay as Black people the way that So they really came at 50 Cent. Ice Cube as well. Ice Cube worked with the Trump administration, and they really came for him. Steve Harvey, when Trump first got elected, he met with Trump, and people came for him. As Black people, is that something that we should do, or should we just be like, look, we can't be coming for each other, regardless of who you're supporting, what you're doing? Where do you come down on that? Is it okay for us to criticize one another and really kind of come for one another for what voting stances we take?
I would say that let's go back to these riots, right? At the beginning of the year, we had a whole bunch of riots. And so we had a whole bunch of riots, and we had people out there saying, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't destroy this. You shouldn't destroy that. And then you had other people saying, no, they need to get their voice across, or whatever the case. You have an opinion everywhere, but some of those riots might have been necessary to get a spark going. So at the end of the day, when we come down to these Black men, they have their own opinion on how they want to vote. What side of the political party they want to support. That is on them. That's on their money. That's on their life. That's on their children. But I bet one thing that they're doing that we're not doing, at those of us who are, putting our opinions on them, they're teaching their children. Okay. So what we need to do is stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and worry about what we're doing in our households and within our radius, in our community, because that's what's going to justify the change. Mm-hmm. If we're sitting too busy about what 50 Cent doing, and what all these rich dudes doing, these rich Black people that's supposed to be coming back to our neighborhood doing, we never build up our own neighborhood. So the goal is for us to mind our business, learn more about ourselves, learn more about our community, learn more about the political party that we want to support, and build it up into our children and in our community. And I think we just need to mind our business and allow people to be what they want to be and who they want to be. And if you have an opinion, do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You brought up a good point when you're talking about the rioting and the different ways that we communicate our anger towards social injustice. So here we go again. In Philadelphia, 27-year-old man, he was armed with a knife. From different reports, it may have been a pretty tame knife, a butter knife. It may have been a little bit more, but it was in broad daylight. 27-year-old man was shot to death, Walter Wallace, by the police. And for the past 2 days, there have been protests and riots. And these have been significant riots where people are boarding up their houses, boarding up their property, and boarding up the businesses and everything like that. Dana, tell me, how do you feel about the rioting and the protesting? Again, 93% of all of the protests that have been going on since George Floyd have been peaceful. So I definitely don't want to put down the wrong information like there's a bunch of riots going on. But how do you feel about the rioting? How is that? How problematic is that?
I find it hard to say that it is extremely problematic when you see riots happening, but yet it yields the result that's necessary. So I can't remember earlier in the year when there were a bunch of riots, but eventually they got around to potentially pressing charges against the police. I can't remember. It's been so many deaths.
Right. Yeah.
Injustices. I can't even keep track at this point, but I do feel like it's a necessary evil on some level. I don't want to say that I condone people destroying property because I don't, but I do understand where the anger comes from. And there's only so much that people can take because clearly being peaceful has not worked. And clearly when you are peaceful, you're not going to get the attention even that sometimes the topic demands.
Okay. Yeah. All right, here we go, Steve. You wake up on Wednesday, Trump has won. Regardless of how people out here feel about it, You know, let's be factual. Let's not play no games. We know that Trump has said some horrible things about Black people. He called African countries S-hole countries. He has talked about the fact that he's talked about the fact that the Central Park Five should have been hung, and even after they were found to be not guilty, no retraction. He's talked about the fact that in his casinos, before they went bankrupt, that he didn't want Black people handling the money or being out front on the floor. Most of the people, when they're talking about voting and they're talking about moving the ball along, they're talking about getting rid of Trump and people like him who are pushing along policies that are franchising and racist. We wake up Wednesday, he's still in office. What is our move when it comes to social justice? In the street level, what is our move? In the church level, what is our move?
Whew. Well, that's a difficult. Why you give me the hard question? But I mean, you know, first of all, I'll start with the street level. Education. We have to educate our kids. We have to educate the youth. You know, I'm a teacher and I'm big on education. You have to teach them, teach a child in the way they should go. So, you know, the youth are actually the young ones are actually leading this movement right now with the protest and all that. So we have to show them the right way. We have to show them this is why you need to vote. And like Tiara said, it's not just about the presidency, it's about the local elections. So I'm supporting this candidate here. Her name is Amy Steele in Cabarrus County. And she's ran a couple of times, but now she has so much momentum that she should and can win. And it's about educating the people about her and her policies and the push. So it's about the push. It's not just about every 4 years or every 2 years where it's an election cycle. It's about knowing what you need to do before then, preparing the people before then. So that's what we should do on the street level. But in the church, we need to continue what we're doing, but a little with more aggression. And education should happen in the church as well. Education should happen everywhere. Teach your members. Teach those members that always talk trash. You know, every church has them. Every church has them. Hey, I ain't gonna vote. You know, you got the guys at 65 years old, didn't vote for anybody, and you know they're stubborn. But you have to come at an angle where you know this is what's happening. This is what we need to do to uplift the people. So, you know, the clergy should continue to do what they're doing, but you know, figure out how they should do it more. But you know, Lord willing, he doesn't win. But it's all about the Senate. It's all about the representatives. The Senate and the House of Representatives, they have the power. And so you know what happened Barack's second term? He didn't have the Senate. He didn't have representatives. So that's why a lot of stuff got shut down. So we just have to make sure we get the senators in there. You know, the newly sworn in justice happened, they rushed it because they had the majority of the Senate to do so. So it's not just about the presidential seat, it's about the other seats and the local seats that actually affect the people.
Yeah. So Tiara, you got these young people who are just so excited about going out here and voting. Well, so excited about voting, so excited about social justice. They've been marching all the time. We've had them on the show where they're passionate about moving everything, but the number one thing that they're talking about is voting. How do you keep them engaged if on November 4th they come up in here and they feel like, okay, we've lost?
No, I mean, if we're gonna look at things in a Christian way, nothing is losing. You know, we're all winning. So at the end of the day, so Trump becomes president again. What are we gonna do about it? What are we gonna do about it? Now, I'm an educator as well. I'm a teacher as well. So my thing is, I always tell my student, study the test maker. Don't study the test. Okay. So now we have a president. So let's study the president. Let's figure out how he made and built his franchise and his empire. And let's build our own in our own community. Yes, let's utilize let's take our 50-cent thoughts, okay? And let's utilize what Trump is going to give us, all right? Utilize what Trump is going to give us and build our community up from there. You know, we cannot always say on the outside that we're winning, but in reality, as long as we call ourselves Christians, we're going to win anyway. And so what can we take from this Trump win if he wins? What can we take from it? I'm going to take whatever is given to me, and I'm going to build on it, and I'm going to build my community up on it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So Dana, is it wrong for us to put too much onus on voting? So for example, there are people who are fighting for social justice on both sides. And so is it wrong for us to say, all right, voting, because it just sets you up for disappointment? Is that, should that not be one of the primary ways that we're trying to push this along? Because that's all you hear is just people saying, we got to get out to vote. That's how we're going to change things. How much difference does voting really, what was that going to do in George Floyd's situation? What was that going to do in Breonna Taylor's situation? What was that going to do in countless others? And so is it wrong for us to just put so much on there? Because again, we have people on both sides of the fence who are going to push towards social justice, or are we doing the right thing by focusing so much on voting?
I definitely think we're doing the right thing by focusing so much on voting. Again, the people you're voting for are technically the people who are going to be in power. The people in power make the rules, they make the laws, they pass what is acceptable and unacceptable. They dictate what kind of funding your neighborhood gets, and that directly impacts all those social justice issues. That impacts how your police force is built and how they're trained and how much funding they have. That impacts your education system. That impacts your local healthcare and what opportunities you have available. I definitely think we need to focus on, or continue to focus on, voting and pushing people to vote. But I also don't want to minimize what you can do on ground level yourself. We should also, along with voting, be trying to encourage people to get involved within their communities and, not just be a bystander and let their communities be run for them, but actually show up to your local community meetings, whatever those look like, or whatever local form of government you have that is accessible to you. Definitely go if you are able. Not everybody's able, but if you're able to be involved, because that's where your voice is really heard directly, and whoever is in charge there is able to take it forward.
Yeah. All right. Well, our time is moving. One last question. I'm coming for all of you. Not you specifically, but all three of you are smart. All three of you have great opinions when it comes to what's going on in the world. One of the problems that we have is the people who are smart and the people who have great opinions about the world and the people that we can trust are not the people that we're voting for. So people like yourselves. So think about yourself, but not yourself. What is stopping people like you from getting involved in the political process and running? Like, why is your other self not running right now? What's the problem? Is it because what? Is it we don't have time? Is it because there's too much money in politics? Is it because they go through all your history and you don't really want them to see everything that's been going on? What's stopping people like us, people like you, from participating in the process on the political level? Start with you, Steve.
Well, in my opinion, I think some of us are too woke. We're overly woke. Like, some of the people that are saying they're woke, they need to take a nap. like for real. Like, come on, man. Like, y'all are too far. And I think, it's some people think they're over and they think they have a lot of knowledge when they don't. And a lot of the reason is social media. Social media can be really, really bad sometimes. But it can also be a blessing. So they're following all these things on social media and the news and the media, and they think they're so aware of everything, they're not thinking for themselves. So they don't have all of the knowledge, but they think they have a lot of knowledge. So overthinking, just being too woke, thinking you know it all, and you don't know it all. I don't know it all. I'll never say I do. But you have to go with facts. I'm really big on facts. So, just digging in and just trying to learn and talk to people. Platforms and resources like what we're doing now is just great. So that's my opinion.
Yep. Dana, why invest in Bright Star Run?
I think for a lot of mothers, time constraints, man. I talked about being involved in your local politics, but I have not been to a single city council meeting here since we've been in the city, and we've been here for 2.5 years. I haven't even been involved in our HOA. So, it's hard. Time constraints are real when you have a full-time job and a full-time family, and, you're dedicated to church, and there's a lot of pulls these days. That, and then, we live in cancellation culture, and I know my past. I'm not interested in everybody knowing my past, though.
Right. Sarah.
All right, I'm gonna make this quick. I think that we lack the resources that we need to get ahead. I think that a lot of us have what we need in our head. We can write it down on a piece of paper. We can tell our dreams and tell how we want to build up the community and do a whole bunch of other things, but we lack the resources, and that can be financially or educationally. We just don't know where to start to get the word out. And I think that's where the biggest problem is. It's a lot of people that have great hearts and great ideas, but there's nowhere to start. And where, the wealthy people and the people that's getting it done, they have a platform already, or they had somebody that was helping them and building them up. So I think a lot of people need that support.
That makes sense. I think right on with that. Well, that is our time. I appreciate all of you coming on. Please come back again, especially after the election. Unfortunately, I don't think, and as you all know, I don't think that anytime soon we will have a resolution to our problems of social injustice. We will continue to see the things that we've seen all summer and all during this COVID situation. But we continue to need to talk about it. We continue to push the ball along. We continue to have the dialogue and come up with answers because people are listening. Thank you for joining us. Please come again. Everyone who has joined us over the internet, thank you and good night.